Mortals had enough of being kind. The response was war. Part 1. The Age of Generosity. For 300 years, humanity had been the kindest species in the galaxy. They helped everyone. They asked for nothing in return. The other races called them the caretakers, and humanity wore this name with pride. It all started when humans first left Earth and met other species among the stars. The galaxy was old and tired. Many civilizations were dying. Many species faced problems they could not solve alone. And humanity, young and eager, wanted to help. The Valkyrie were the first. Their home star was dying, growing larger and hotter each year. In 50 years, their entire civilization would burn. They had no ships large enough to move their people. They had no place to go. They were waiting to die. Then the humans came. Human engineers worked for 20 years to build the largest evacuation fleet the galaxy had ever seen. They gave away their technology freely. They trained Valkyrie pilots. They found new worlds for them to settle. When the old Valkyrie homeworld finally burned, not a single Valkyrie died. Humanity had saved them all. The Valkyrie thanked them with words. Just words. But humanity did not mind. They were happy to help. Next came the Shuvan, a species made of living crystal. They needed rare minerals to reproduce. Without these minerals, they would slowly go extinct. The minerals existed only in the most dangerous asteroid fields, places filled with radiation and crushing gravity. Human miners volunteered. They worked in terrible conditions. Many got sick from the radiation. Some died. But they kept mining year after year, until the Shuvan had enough minerals to survive for centuries. The Shuvan sent a formal thank you message. Nothing more. But humanity did not complain. They were happy to help. Then there were the Ithriseni, a collective species connected by a biological network. A terrible disease destroyed their network. Billions of Ithriseni lost their connection to each other. They could no longer think together. They could no longer feel each other. They were alone in their own heads for the first time in their history, and they were going mad. Human doctors came to help. They lived among the Ithriseni for decades. They studied the disease. They slowly rebuilt the network, piece by piece, mind by mind. It took 40 years, but they saved the Ithriseni from madness. The Ithriseni said, "Thank you." Then they asked humans to leave. They wanted to be alone now. Humanity left without argument. They were happy to help. This was how it went for 300 years. Humanity gave and gave and gave. They shared their technology. They shared their medicine. They shared their food and their ships and their knowledge. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. They simply believed that kindness was its own reward. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was born into this world of endless giving. She had spent 40 years as humanity's voice to the galaxy. She had negotiated peace treaties and trade agreements. She had convinced humans to give even more, help even more, sacrifice even more. She believed in the mission. She truly believed that if humanity was kind enough, long enough, the galaxy would become a better place. She thought that one day, all species would treat each other with the same kindness. Humans showed them. She was wrong. The message came on a quiet Tuesday. Elena was in her office on the great station that orbited Earth. She was drinking tea and reading reports about a new human mission to help a struggling colony. She felt good. She felt proud of her species. Then her screen lit up with an urgent transmission. It was from the Galactic Council, the governing body of 17 major species. Elena knew them all. She had worked with them all. She considered many of them friends. The message was short. It was cold. It was written in formal legal language that took her a moment to understand. When she understood, her teacup fell from her hand and shattered on the floor. The council had held a secret vote. No human representatives were allowed to attend. They had voted on something called the Containment Resolution. It passed with 17 votes in favor, 0 against. The resolution declared that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed to spread through the galaxy. Their kindness, the resolution said, was clearly a trick. Their generosity was a strategy to make other species dependent on them. Their help was actually a form of control. Therefore, humanity would be contained to their home system. All human ships outside the Sol system would be seized. All human colonies would be redistributed to species with greater needs. All human technology shared with other species would become the permanent property of those species. Humanity had 30 days to comply. If they did not comply, the Council would use force. Elena read the message 3 times. She read it slowly, carefully, making sure she understood every word. She thought about the evacuation fleet they had built for the Velkari. She thought about the miners who had died for the Shuvan. She thought about the doctors who had given decades of their lives to the ITH race. She thought about 300 years of kindness. And then she did something strange. Something she had not done in 40 years of careful diplomacy. She laughed. It started as a small sound, almost a cough. Then it grew. It grew until her shoulders shook. It grew until tears ran down her face. It grew until she was holding her stomach, gasping for breath, laughing so hard it hurt. Her assistant rushed in, worried. He found the ambassador on the floor, surrounded by broken pieces of her teacup, laughing and crying at the same time. "Ambassador?" he asked. "Are you all right? What happened?" Elena looked up at him. Her eyes were wet, but something in them had changed. Something soft had become hard. Something patient had become sharp. "They think we're weak," she said. "They think our kindness means we cannot fight. They think 300 years of peace means we have forgotten how to make war." She stood up slowly. She brushed the tea from her clothes. She looked out the window at Earth, blue and beautiful, floating in the black. "Send a message to Earth," she said. "Send it to the military council. Send it to the old generals we put out to pasture. Send it to every human in the galaxy." Her assistant waited, stylus ready. Elena smiled. It was not a nice smile. Tell them the galaxy just made a very big mistake. Mortals had enough of being kind. Their response was war. Part 2. The weight of memory. The news spread across human space like fire through dry grass. Within hours, every human in the galaxy knew what the Council had done. Within days, something began to change. On Earth, people gathered in the streets. They did not riot. They did not scream or break things. They simply stood together, millions of them, looking up at the sky with strange expressions on their faces. Some looked sad. Some looked confused. Most looked angry, but it was a quiet anger, a patient anger. The most dangerous kind. In the great halls of the United Earth Assembly, the politicians argued about what to do. Some wanted to negotiate. Some wanted to apologize. Some thought maybe the Council was right. Maybe humanity had been too aggressive in their helping. Maybe they should accept the punishment. Then General Marcus Chun walked into the room. He was old, very old. His hair was white and his face was lined with wrinkles. He walked with a cane, and his uniform was dusty from years of sitting in a closet. Most of the young politicians did not even know who he was, but the old ones knew. The old ones remembered. Marcus Chun had been the greatest military mind of his generation. 50 years ago, he had warned the assembly that humanity's generosity would be mistaken for weakness. He had begged them to keep their defenses strong, to remember that kindness and strength were not opposites. They had called him a warmonger. They had called him a relic of humanity's violent past. They had pushed him into retirement and tried to forget he existed. Now they remembered. General Chun walked slowly to the front of the assembly. The room fell silent. Even the politicians who wanted to surrender stopped talking. There was something in the old man's eyes that demanded attention. "I told you," he said. His voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the room. 50 years ago, I told you this day would come. You did not listen. No one argued. No one could. For 300 years, we gave them everything," Chun continued. "We gave them our ships. We gave them our medicine. We gave them our technology. We taught them how we think. We showed them how we build. We let them into our homes and our hearts and our secrets." He paused, leaning on his cane. "They know everything about us. They know our supply lines. They know our defense networks. They know where our people live and how we protect them. We gave them this information freely because we trusted them." The assembly was completely silent now. "But we never taught them one thing," Chun said. "We never taught them what happens when you betray humanity." He straightened his back, and suddenly he did not look so old anymore. "I am here to teach them." Within weeks, everything changed. Deep beneath the mountains of Earth, in bunkers that had been sealed for centuries, ancient machines hummed back to life. These were the weapons humanity had built during their violent past, before they learned to be kind. They had kept them hidden, hoping they would never be needed again. Now they were needed. From orbital graveyards, old warships were dragged into the light. These ships had been turned into museums, their weapons removed, their engines cold. Engineers swarmed over them like ants, replacing what had been taken, fixing what had broken, making them ready for war. But the machines were not the biggest change. The biggest change was in the people. Captain Sarah Okonkwo had spent 15 years helping alien refugees. She had dedicated her life to kindness. She had held dying aliens in her arms and promised them everything would be okay. She had believed in the mission with all her heart. Now she stood in a training room, learning how to kill. Her instructor was an old Marine who had fought in humanity's last war, centuries ago. He watched her practice with cold eyes. "You hesitate," he said. "You pull your strikes. You still think like a helper." Sarah gritted her teeth. "I was a helper. For 15 years. And how did they repay you?" Sarah thought about the refugees she had saved. She thought about the Velkari children she had carried to safety. She thought about how those same Velkari had voted to put her species in a cage. Something cold settled in her chest. "Show me again," she said. "I won't hesitate this time." Across human space, the same transformation was happening. Scientists who had spent their careers building hospitals now designed weapons. Engineers who had made terraforming machines now made warships. Teachers who had educated alien children now trained human soldiers. The smiles were gone. The gentle words were gone. The endless patience was gone. Ambassador Elena Vasquez watched the transformation from her office. Part of her was sad. She had spent her whole life building a different humanity, a kind humanity, a humanity that helped instead of hurt. But another part of her, a part she had kept hidden for 40 years, felt something else. Relief. She had always known this day might come. She had always known that kindness alone was not enough. She had hoped she was wrong. She had prayed she was wrong, but she had prepared anyway. "Ambassador," her assistant said, entering her office. "The council has sent another message. They are demanding we begin the evacuation of our colonies." Elena did not look up from her screen. She was watching the shipyards, where new warships were being built at impossible speed. "Tell them we received their message," she said. "And our response?" Elena finally looked at her assistant. Her eyes were calm. Her voice was steady, but something in her expression made him step back. "Tell them we are coming." The assistant swallowed hard. "Coming to negotiate?" Elena smiled that same terrible smile she had smiled when she first read the council's betrayal. "No," she said. "Tell them we are coming to teach them what they should have learned 300 years ago. What is that, Ambassador? Elena turned back to the window. Earth and below her, beautiful and blue and filled with 8 billion people who had just stopped being kind. That humanity chose to be gentle, she said. We chose it every single day. We could have chosen differently. We could have conquered the galaxy instead of helping it. We had the power. We always had the power. She watched a new warship rise from the orbital dock, its weapons gleaming in the sunlight. Now they will learn what we are capable of when we stop choosing kindness. Mortals had enough of being kind. Their response was war. Part 3. The first lesson. Admiral Kethmara of the Valkyrie Dominion was not worried. She stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Eternal Flame, and watched her fleet patrol the border of Valkyrie space. 47 warships. 3 orbital defense stations. The finest weapons her species had ever built. All of it designed with human help. Kethmara had been the loudest voice in the council calling for human containment. She had argued for years that humans were too dangerous to trust. Their kindness, she said, was a mask. Their generosity was a trap. Better to cage them now, before they showed their true nature. Some had called her paranoid. Some had called her ungrateful. After all, the humans had saved her entire species from extinction. They had built the ships that carried her people to safety. They had asked for nothing in return, but Kethmara knew better. No species was that kind without a reason. No species gave so much without expecting something back. The humans were planning something. She was sure of it. Now, finally, the galaxy had listened to her. The humans would be contained. The threat would be ended. And Kethmara would be proven right. Her sensor officer made a small sound of surprise. Admiral, he said, I am detecting something strange. What is it? There appears to be a distortion at the edge of the system. It looks like ships, many ships. Kethmara felt a chill run down her spine. How many? The sensor officer checked his readings 3 times before answering. His voice was shaking. 72 warships, Admiral. And they just appeared out of nowhere. The human fleet had arrived. Kethmara stared at her screen in shock. Human ships were not supposed to be able to travel this fast. Human ships were not supposed to be this advanced. Human ships were supposed to be simple, peaceful vessels designed for cargo and passengers. These were not those ships. These ships were dark and angular, covered in weapons she did not recognize. They moved through space with a speed and precision that should have been impossible. They formed into attack patterns that her tactical computers could not predict. How? She whispered. How do they have ships like this? Her tactical officer, an old veteran named Vortek, answered grimly. They always had ships like this, Admiral. They simply chose not to use them. Kethmara opened a communication channel. Human fleet, this is Admiral Kethmara of the Valkyrie Dominion. You are in violation of the containment resolution. Turn back now or we will be forced to defend ourselves. For a long moment, there was no response. Then a human voice came through the speakers. It was calm and cold. Admiral Kethmara, we remember you. You spoke often at the Council about the threat humanity posed. You argued for our containment. You convinced the others to vote against us. Kethmara lifted her chin. I did what was necessary to protect the galaxy. From what? From the species that saved your people from extinction? Your kindness was a strategy. Your generosity was a weapon. We saw through your tricks. There was a pause. Then a human voice returned, and now there was something terrible in it. You want to see our weapons, Admiral? Very well, we will show you. The battle began. Kethmara had trained for war her entire life. She had studied tactics and strategies. She had run countless simulations. She thought she was prepared. She was wrong. The human fleet moved like a single organism, every ship perfectly coordinated with every other. They struck at exactly the right points and exactly the right times, hitting weaknesses that Kethmara did not even know existed. Her defense grid activated automatically, targeting the human ships with precision. But the humans had designed that grid. They knew every frequency. They knew every blind spot. They slipped through her defenses like water through fingers. One by one, her ships went dark. The humans did not destroy them. They simply disabled them, shutting down engines and weapons with surgical precision. It was almost insulting how easy they made it look. In 11 minutes, the battle was over. 47 Valkyrie warships drifted helplessly in space. 3 orbital stations hung silent and powerless. The Valkyrie Dominion's entire defense force had been defeated without a single human ship being scratched. "Impossible," Kethmara whispered. "This is impossible." Then her own ship shuddered as something attached to the hull. Boarding pods. The humans were coming aboard. Kethmara drew her weapon and waited. Her guards formed around her, ready to fight to the death. They would not surrender. They would not beg. They were Valkyrie. The humans cut through the bulkhead in under a minute. They moved through her ship with terrifying efficiency, stunning her guards with weapons that made no sound. They did not kill. They did not even wound. They simply removed every obstacle in their path with cold, mechanical precision. In 4 minutes, they reached the bridge. The first human through the door was a woman in dark armor. She moved like a predator, checking every corner, making sure the room was secure. When she was satisfied, she removed her helmet. Kethmara recognized her immediately. "Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo," she said. "You helped our refugees settle on New Velkar. You lived among us for 2 years." Sarah Okonkwo looked at the Admiral with eyes that held no warmth. "I did. I helped your children learn to walk. I held your elders when they were afraid. I gave you 2 years of my life because I believed you were worth saving, and we were grateful. Were you?" Sarah stepped closer. "Then why did you vote to put my species in a cage? Why did you take everything we gave you and use it to stab us in the back?" Kethmara had no answer. For the first time in her life, she had no argument, no clever words, no justification. Sarah leaned close. Her voice was soft, but every word was sharp as a blade. "We built you those evacuation ships, Admiral. We saved every single one of your people. We asked for nothing in return. And this is how you repaid us." "I was protecting my species," Kethmara said weakly. "I was protecting the galaxy." "From what?" "From kindness?" Sarah shook her head. "You were not protecting anyone. You were afraid. You could not understand why we helped you, so you decided we must have a secret plan. You could not accept that we were simply good." She stepped back. "So now you will see what we look like when we stop being good." Kethmara felt real fear for the first time in decades. "What are you going to do?" Sarah looked at her for a long moment. Then she turned and walked toward the door. "Today? Nothing. We are going to let you go. We are going to return your ships and your stations and your weapons. We are going to leave your space and never return." Kethmara blinked. "You are showing us mercy?" Sarah stopped at the door and looked back. "Yes, Admiral. We are showing you mercy. But remember this moment. Remember how easily we defeated you. Remember that we could have destroyed you and chose not to." Her eyes were cold as stars. "Because the next time we meet, there will be no mercy left. You used it all today." And then she was gone, and Kethmara was alone with the ruins of her pride. Mortals had enough of being kind. Their response was war. Part 4. The Galactic Reckoning. The news of the Valkyrie defeat spread across the galaxy in hours. Every species heard the story. 47 warships. 3 stations. Destroyed in 11 minutes. Not a single human casualty. The Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. The representatives gathered in their great hall, the same hall where they had voted to contain humanity. They looked at each other with fear in their eyes. "This is a disaster," said the Shuvan delegate, his crystalline body flickering with stress. The humans were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be peaceful. How did they defeat the Valkyrie so easily? "They were never weak," said an old Ithrisen, her voice tired. "We simply believed what we wanted to believe." "What do we do now?" asked another delegate. "Do we surrender?" "We fight," said Kethmaris' replacement, a young Valkyrie admiral named Restor. "We combine our fleets. We work together. We can still defeat them." But before they could argue further, a message arrived. It was from Ambassador Elena Vasquez. The message was short. It was polite. It contained no threats and no demands. It simply informed the Council that humanity had decided to change their relationship with the galaxy. Starting immediately, all human aid programs would end. All human medical supplies would be recalled. All human engineers and doctors and teachers would return home. All human trade routes would be closed. Humanity was not going to war with the galaxy. They were simply going to stop helping Dot at first. The Council did not understand how serious this was. They had survived without humans before. They could survive without humans again. Then the problems began. The Shuvan were the first to feel it. For 200 years, human miners had provided them with the rare minerals they needed to reproduce. Without those minerals, Shuvan could not have children. The humans had built up a large reserve for them, enough to last decades. But when the Shuvan went to access that reserve, they found it was gone. Human ships had quietly removed it all during the confusion after the Valkyrie battle. Every single piece of mineral had been taken back. The Shuvan delegate stood before the Council with desperation in his glowing eyes. "Without those minerals, my species will go extinct within a generation. The humans know this. They are holding our future hostage." But there was nothing the Council could do. The Ithrisheni were next. Their biological network, the system that connected all Ithrisheni minds, still depended on human-designed maintenance protocols. Human engineers had created special machines to keep the network healthy. Without those machines, without the humans who knew how to run them, the network would begin to fail. Within months, Ithrisheni and outlying colonies began to lose their connection. They reported feelings of loneliness. They reported confusion and fear. Some went mad, just like in the old days before the humans came. The Ithrisheni delegate begged the Council for help. "Send a message to the humans. Tell them we are sorry. Tell them we will give them anything they want." The Council sent the message. The human response was 3 words. "You voted." Remember? Across the galaxy, the consequences of the containment resolution became clear. Every species that had voted yes found themselves cut off from human help. Colony worlds that had depended on human supplies began to starve. Hospitals that had used human medicine ran out of treatments. Ships that had been built with human technology began to break down. And the human military continued to move. They did not conquer worlds. They did not kill civilians. They did not behave like the monsters the Council had feared. Instead, they simply cut off every connection between human space and the rest of the galaxy. Trade routes were blocked. Communication stations were disabled. Jump gates were locked down. One by one, the species that had voted against humanity found themselves isolated, alone, unable to help each other. Admiral Restor tried to fight. He gathered a fleet of ships from 6 different species, the largest combined force the galaxy had ever seen. He thought numbers would matter. He thought unity would matter. It did not matter. The human fleet was smaller, but it was faster, smarter, and more brutal. They did not fight fair. They struck supply lines. They destroyed communication satellites. They hit command ships and left the rest of the fleet leaderless and confused. Restor's great combined force fell apart in a week. Not destroyed, just broken. Ships retreated to their home systems. Alliances collapsed. Everyone blamed everyone else, and through it all, the humans said nothing. They made no speeches. They issued no demands. They simply kept doing what they were doing, slowly and methodically cutting the galaxy apart. Ambassador Vasquez agreed to meet with the council one final time. The representatives gathered in their great hall. But this time, they were not proud and confident. They were broken and afraid. "Please," said the Shuvan delegate, "we will give you anything. We will apologize publicly. We will pay reparations. Just give us back the minerals, please." Vasquez looked at him. Her face showed nothing. 300 years ago, your ancestors were dying. They could not reproduce. Your species was going extinct. Do you remember what happened next? The humans came, the delegate said quietly. The humans helped. We helped, Vasquez agreed. We mined those minerals in conditions that killed our people. We gave them to you freely. We asked for nothing in return. We did it because we believed it was right. She paused. And then you voted to put us in a cage. The delegate had no response. Vasquez looked around the room at all the representatives. These were beings she had worked with for decades. She had negotiated with them. She had laughed with them. She had considered some of them friends. You thought our kindness meant we could not be cruel, she said. You were wrong. We chose to be kind. We chose it every single day when we could have chosen differently. And you made us regret that choice. She stood up. Now you will learn what humanity looks like when we stop choosing kindness. What do you want? Someone called out. What will it take to make this stop? Vasquez paused at the door. You voted to contain us because you thought we were a threat. You were right. We are a threat. We always were. But we chose not to be. We chose to help instead of conquer. We chose to heal instead of harm. She looked back at them one last time. You do not get to choose for us anymore. You do not get to decide when we are kind and when we are cruel. That decision was always ours. And you made us choose wrong. She walked out and left them in silence. The Galactic Council voted to dissolve itself that night. There was nothing left to govern. There was nothing left to unite. There was only humanity, cold and patient, waiting to see what the galaxy would do next. Mortals had enough of being kind. Their response was war. Part 5. The New Order 5. Years had passed since the quiet vote. The galaxy was not the same. The old Galactic Council was gone. In its place stood the Human Protectorate, a new organization that humanity controlled completely. But it was not an empire. Humans did not rule the other species. They did not make laws for them. They did not tax them or command them. They simply watched. And they remembered. On Earth, General Marcus Chen had finally retired for the last time. He was very old now, over 120 years old, kept alive by medicine that humans no longer shared with anyone else. He sat in his garden most days, looking up at the sky, thinking about what humanity had become. Some days he felt proud. They had proven that humanity was strong. They had shown the galaxy that kindness was not weakness. They had taught the other species to respect them. Other days he felt sad. The galaxy was quiet now. The trade routes were open again, but they were not busy like before. The species that had voted against humanity stayed in their own systems, afraid to travel too far. The cooperation and connection that humans had worked so hard to build was broken, but General Chen knew this was necessary. The galaxy had needed to learn. And some lessons could only be taught through pain. Ambassador Elena Vasquez had taken his place as humanity's leader. She was different now than she had been before the betrayal. Harder, more careful. The idealist who had believed in kindness above all else was gone. In her place was a woman who understood that kindness without strength was just weakness waiting to be exploited. But something of the old Elena remained. She still believed that the galaxy could be better. She still hoped that one day humanity could go back to being the caretakers. She just knew it would take a long time. The first species to rejoin the human community were the Thelvari, a small civilization that had been excluded from the original council. They had never voted against humanity because they had never been allowed to vote at all. When humanity began to rebuild connections with the galaxy, the Thelvari were first in line. Elena met with their ambassador personally. She remembered how the Thelvari had been treated by the council, ignored and dismissed because they were small and weak. "Why do you want to work with us?" she asked. "We are not the kind species we used to be." The Thelvari ambassador, a small creature with large eyes and thin arms, looked at her carefully. "You are exactly the species you used to be," he said. "You are kind and you are strong. Before, you showed only your kindness. Now you show both. That is not a change. That is a completion." Elena thought about his words for a long time. She thought about them when she went to sleep that night. She thought about them when she woke up the next morning. Maybe he was right. Maybe humanity had not changed at all. Maybe they had simply stopped hiding part of themselves. Over the next few years, more species joined the Protectorate. They came slowly, carefully, always respectful, always polite. They did not demand anything. They did not expect anything. They simply asked if they could trade, if they could talk, if they could perhaps be friends. Humanity said yes. But they did not give freely anymore. Every trade was balanced. Every deal was fair. Every partnership had clear rules and clear consequences. Some species did not join. The Valkyrie stayed in their own space, rebuilding their pride along with their fleet. The Shuvan negotiated a cold arrangement, trading resources for the minerals they needed but nothing more. The Ithraseni closed their borders completely, preferring isolation to admitting they had been wrong. Humanity let them make their own choices. That was the difference now. Before, humans had tried to help everyone whether they wanted help or not. Now they only helped those who asked, and only as much as was asked, and never more. On the anniversary of the quiet vote, Elena gave a speech to the Galactic Assembly. Representatives from dozens of species had gathered to hear her words. They sat in perfect silence, waiting. 5 years ago, Elena began, the Galactic Council voted to contain humanity. They called us dangerous. They called our kindness a trick. They decided that we should be locked away for the safety of the galaxy. She paused, looking around the room. They were partly right. We are dangerous. We have always been dangerous. Our history is filled with war and violence and destruction. We came from a world where survival meant fighting, where kindness was a luxury that could get you killed. She let that sink in. But somewhere along the way, we decided to be different. We decided that kindness was worth the risk. We decided that helping others was more important than protecting ourselves. We made that choice every single day for 300 years. Her voice grew harder, and then you made us regret it. The assembly was completely silent. Some representatives looked ashamed. Some looked afraid. Some looked angry. But all of them listened. We are not going back to the way things were, Elena said. We cannot forget what happened. We cannot pretend that 300 years of kindness was not thrown back in our faces. That memory will stay with us for generations. She softened slightly. But we are not monsters. We never were. We are simply people who learned a hard lesson. Kindness must come with strength. Trust must be earned, not given freely. And no one, no matter how much we help them, should ever be allowed to take advantage of our good nature again. She stood straighter. The human protectorate is not an empire. We do not want to rule you. We do not want to control you. We simply want to be equals. True equals, who treat each other with respect and fairness. Is that too much to ask? The assembly murmured. Many representatives shook their heads. Then let us build something new together, Elena said. Not the galaxy of the old council, where some species were more important than others. Not the galaxy of the old caretakers, where humans gave everything and expected nothing. A new galaxy. A better galaxy. A galaxy where kindness and strength walk together. She looked out at the representatives. At these beings from 100 different worlds, and for the first time in 5 years, she felt something like hope. We were patient once, she said. We may be patient again, but our patience has limits. Respect them, and we can be the best friends you have ever known. Ignore them, and you will remember why the universe learned to fear humanity in the first place. She smiled, and this time it was not a cold smile or a cruel smile. It was simply tired and honest. The choice is yours. It always was. We are just making sure you think carefully before you choose. She walked away from the podium, and behind her, the galaxy began to rebuild. It would take time. It would take work. It would take trust that had not yet been earned. But for the first time since the betrayal, it seemed possible. Humanity had not forgotten how to be kind. They had simply learned that kindness alone was not enough. They had learned that strength and gentleness were not opposites. They had learned that the best way to help others was to make sure others could never hurt them again. And the galaxy, watching and learning, began to understand something important. Humans were not saints. They were not monsters. They were something far more interesting. They were mortal. They were flawed. They made mistakes and learned from them. They could be kind and cruel, gentle and fierce, forgiving and vengeful. And that made them the most dangerous species in the universe, because you could predict a saint. You could predict a monster, but you could never predict a human. You could only hope that when they made their choice, they chose kindness, and pray that you had not given them a reason to choose otherwise.